There you go.
Here we go. So, welcome everybody to a masterclass that I've been thinking about for some time now, really about kind of how we blend the human side of AI with the technical side as well. We're hosting this partnership today with Summize, which I'm really excited with. Summize have been a brilliant partner of ours for a couple of things so far, and we've got much more planned going into the new year as well. So, feels like a real perfect partnership. Tom, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself? Tom is Summize's representative today.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. Great to meet you. This is my first Being Human event, so great to be here. I'm Tom Pratt. I'm our legal counsel. I also do some help with the pre-sale side as well as Summize. So originally joined just over 4 years ago now in our Manchester office and then made the move with our US expansion over to Boston, where I am currently. So yeah, great to meet you all. Really excited for this topic today.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. So I know that I recognise quite a few of the faces that are on screen now. So that's wonderful to see. But for anybody who doesn't know anything about Being Human, we are a consultancy that we was founded about 2 years ago. It's myself and my sister, and we're on a mission really to really promote the human side of being a lawyer and support teams across the world with the skills that they need to really maximise their own individual and team performance. Um, and so tech and the use of tech and how we incorporate AI into our workflows is something that we're really passionate about. I come at it very much from a position that actually it's got huge potential to revolutionize the way we work. And as a recovering lawyer myself, I'm really excited about the prospect that actually it might take some of the churn out of our day and let us focus on the things where we can really add value and we can that we enjoy doing. So it's a very important part of who we are and what we do. So it's very important there. Um, Summize, do you want to give a quick overview, Tom, about who
Yeah,
Summize is
of course.
for
So
those
I
who
don't
don't
know if
know?
Yeah, I don't know if people have come across us before, potentially. We are an end-to-end contract lifecycle management platform. So we help with the drafting, the negotiation, then ultimately the storage and tracking of signed contracts. We integrate into lots of tools that you'll be familiar with in terms of the adoption piece, but most relevant today, we have lots of different AI features that we can help with. At our core, we use a lot of AI for data extraction, really. So pulling information out of your signed agreements, helping to track renewal dates, things like that. But we also have a lot of AI embedded in the contract review part of our product as well, which we'll probably come on to a little bit later.
Yeah, awesome. Brilliant. Now, for anybody who's been to a Being Human masterclass before or a session before, I always say a couple of things. One is that I would love you to share openly that this is hopefully we can build a brave space amongst ourselves and, please share openly. I certainly have not got all the answers. I'll do my best to go and find answers if I don't know them. And I'm sure Tom will do the same. I always ask people to come with an open heart and a curious mind. Some of what we talk about today, you might think, it's not for me, it doesn't really land. But that's great. That's awesome. We are all about extending the pool of wisdom. So just by planting different ideas, sharing our knowledge, sharing our experiences, we'll all be much richer for that. We also try and make sure that they're as interactive as possible. So I appreciate it's lunchtime in the UK, so you may well be eating your lunch. But I will be asking some questions, and I would love some participation in the chat to hear your responses, hear your thoughts. If you would like to air your thoughts, kind of on the by coming off mute, then please do that as well. Yeah, it's lots of fun to have some participation. And then the final thing is in the chat box, feel free to introduce yourself, show a LinkedIn post. I'm always aware that actually when it's a virtual setting, it's a bit harder to connect with other people here, but feel free to share your information, where you are in particular. I'm fascinated. So Sam has just messaged, say she's coming to us all the way from Australia, which I am very excited about. Welcome, Sam. Hope you're well. But yeah, please do share. And I'm very intrigued as to where everybody is today because we've, as I say, had global sign-ups. So that's wonderful. So just to get you all in the mood a little bit, I am going to ask you to look around you. And I'd like to see if you've got an object lying around. Don't overthink it. I'm only going to give you 10 seconds. An object lying around on your desk. that represents or could represent how you feel about AI. Don't overthink it. Go for what you see first. An object on your desk or sitting around you that represents how you feel about AI. And maybe when you found it, you can drop it in the chat, hold it up to the screen, what you've got and why it represents how you feel about AI. Tom, what have you got?
I've just thinking about this, Claire. I've obviously been drinking from my tea mug pretty endlessly so far. I don't know if it's necessarily the way that I feel about AI, but I think it's the way that a lot of people can, which is almost half full or half empty, in the sense that a lot of people, they may feel that, oh, okay, I can trust it to do everything with my life, and it's a lot more optimistic in that sense, but also half empty in that people are very cautious about it. I think that goes to the heart of probably what we're going to be talking about today.
Awesome. Ashana's got a plant representing new, oh, it's just flipped on there, representing new shape, new shoots and growth needs watering. Very poetic, Ashana. I love it. Sam, I can see a flip-flop on the floor. Oh, hang on. I can see I can't see, I can't keep up. I can see a flip-flop on the floor, and that feels like it reflects how I feel about AI. Sometimes really excited, sometimes completely freaked out or super critical. Perfect. Certainly
That's
feel like that.
incredibly
I've got a
us.
response. Yeah, I've got a
Incredibly
responsible
Australian,
AI
actually.
checklist at the side of my desk. That's from Lisa. Brilliant. My mobile always listening. I love it. So next question I'd like you to consider a highlighter pen, being able to see the key details easily. I love it. See, so much messaging and everything around us. Um, Next question. On a scale of 1 to 10, put the question up here so you can see it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust AI right now? And can you tell us what's driving that? And take a couple of seconds, put some answer in the chat. 4 out of 5. I should have said that 1, by the way, is very low, 10 is very
That's an 8
high.
out of
So
10.
there's an 8 out of 10. A lot of
Yeah,
trust.
4 or 5.
4 to 5. God, we're a very trusting audience, aren't we? 3 to 4, 5. It's getting lower. No, it's 4.5. I like, okay, I see. Angus is sitting in the middle on 6 to 7. 3, not reliable. 6. Wouldn't feel just a ton of low. Where are you,
Quite a big
Tom? Where are
range,
you on the
yeah.
scale?
I probably sit close to Angus with a 6 or a 7, I'd say.
Yeah. And do you know why? Can you identify what it is that's driving that?
I think it ultimately comes down to, and we're going to get into this, but ultimately it comes down to what you're trusting it with, right? I mean, would I trust it to give me doctor's advice and things like that? Probably not. But would I trust it to, go away and help me do my professional job and speed things up for me? Most likely.
Yeah. Cool. So, what I thought we'd do, this is not unusual, by the way, more coming in for, I'm going to say that the majority of people are below 5. So I would say the majority of people are on the lower end of trusting AI. And so from a human perspective, I suppose what I would say is I reckon that's pretty normal. As humans, we are very wary of anything new. That's our chimp brain or our amygdala kicking in, a massive defense mechanism that's been with us right from the start, that doesn't like anything we haven't seen before, automatically puts our guard up. And why? Because we ultimately want to protect ourselves. So when we don't know something, we are not familiar with it, then we automatically put our guard up and we take a backseat approach. And we have to get comfortable with it. We have to gain confidence in it in order to stop that threat response, stop that trigger, and allow us to work. Now, the thing that's really interesting is that when we're in that threat response, we lose up to 61% of our cognitive ability. So when we're feeling triggered by something like AI or by tech, then what happens is we lose our ability to think about other things. So from a performance perspective, we need to make sure that we are quashing those concerns about our worries, quashing those things with concerns which are triggered as best as we can so that we can maximize our performance. Now, because I'm human, I think I've just messaged that and realised, oh no, they are. So I didn't think that any of my notes were popping up, but they are. So that's a relief for you. Otherwise, you might have got waffle. But none of my I don't know what's going on with empathy there, but there we go. So, what's this slide all about? This slide is about trust and about what we know about how humans and interpersonal skills about how we develop trust. Now, there's been lots of work around trust and about how people can integrate trust between teams, because what we do know that is trust is absolutely essential in order for high performing teams. It's absolutely at the core of high performing teams, and so it's a really important and very much studied subject. How do we grow trust? There's various models that have been floated around, but ultimately they come down to three component parts, which this study, which was done by Fry and Morris, identifies. And Fry and Morris identified that we can break those down to logic, empathy, and authenticity. And ultimately, you need each of those elements in order to succeed, in order to be the most high performing team. So logic is basically, I believe in you, I've got faith in your knowledge, I understand what you're doing. Empathy is essentially, I believe that you care about me. I believe that you trust in that you care about me and the outcome, and that you are essentially have that human connection. And then the authenticity is essentially that you mean what you say. And so for humans, we have this need, if you like, for all three elements. But what is intriguing for me, and really is the reason why I've been pondering this question about trust certainly in an AI context, is I don't think it's immediately obvious how either of those three components, or in fact different components which follow a very same theme that have been floated by other academics who are looking at what makes trust, how they feed into a team member when it's not human. So what we're really being asked to do in the age of AI and tech is to come on board and trust something that isn't human, and something that we can't easily identify with us will show logic, authenticity, and empathy. So I suppose when you break it down, you're really saying, right, well, logic, let's challenge each of these things. So can AI demonstrate logic? So can it demonstrate to us that it knows what it's talking about? I think this is one of the first challenges I see, and that might be that actually it's incredibly complicated. And so can we trust it? As lawyers, we kind of have that doubt. We want to understand all the thinking that's gone on before. Can we do that with AI? Potentially not. Authenticity. Do we think that it's being itself, that it's being its genuine query? Can a robot show that? And then empathy, can we show that it really cares about us? I've seen a lot of different thoughts about this, and actually we're seeing that ChatGPT is starting to be a bit more empathetic. But I suppose that for me then raises the question about authenticity. Is it able to be authentically empathetic? I think that for me is a
Yeah.
question. Um, Tom, how do you feel? Do you think AI can show us those attributes, logic, authenticity, empathy?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think what we've seen as of late is, particularly, I don't know if you've seen it in your own testing, but using AI, something like ChatGPT, and you're responsive with it, it really does try to interact with you in a very similar mannerisms and similar approach that a human would do, even in the way that it
Mm,
talks and things like that. And I think that's obviously the team probably at OpenAI trying to help build some of that empathy and authenticity. Um, yeah, it is interesting. I think logic, as you mentioned, is a big part of it, because you can always go back and say, how have you come to this conclusion?
mhm.
Can you show your workings out? Things like that. And that's definitely a really good trust building exercise. It's anything that isn't human, I always sort of go to the root and question, well, what's its almost like motivating factors? So particularly from
Mhm.
like an empathy and an authenticity perspective, um, it's interesting when you're interacting with something that presents itself as a person but fundamentally isn't, to think about, okay, what are the actual drivers behind that? I don't know
Mm.
what your experience is
Uh,
with that, Claire.
yeah, no, I think it's true. Well, let's put it to the chat as well. What do other people think? Do you think that those do you think that AI can demonstrate those three attributes? So authenticity, we're talking about authenticity, logic, empathy. Have you got any
Mm.
experience of it? It'd be really interesting to hear. If I go back, that's the slide. Logic, yes. Eliza, interesting. Do you feel like you need to be able to understand the thinking behind it? Not sure how the empathy can be
I,
authentic exactly.
I think that's almost
Um,
a personality type, probably too, in terms of which one of these do you put the most credence in. I know for me, and
mm,
probably a lot of people on this call, I really feel like I need to understand something before I can really trust it.
yeah. Oh, really interesting. Sam, it comes on to a point, and she says, I have been reading about the expert bias. You think something does a good job when you don't know it so well. We'll come on to talk a bit about that, Sam. Interesting thought. Um, Knights A, I'm not sure who that is, but someone's saying there have been cases of people expressing mental health issues to ChatGPT, and it seems to encourage people not to reach out to others. Oh my goodness, that's tragic.
I
That's
think I
really
heard about
sad.
that actually maybe a year or so
Yeah.
ago.
What motivates you? It's difficult to see authenticity. So this is really interesting. Okay, so there's a general feeling that actually maybe this model that we've seen, that we're used to seeing, actually is no longer fit for purpose when we're using humans, and we've got human and AI interaction. So let's take it back a bit then and think, well, if the model that we're so used to seeing, this interpersonal model of logic, authenticity, empathy, isn't fit for the tech and AI that we're seeing at the moment, how do we build confidence in something that is non-human? Um, and so let's take it to current experience and think about yourself and drop it in the chat. Well, where are you already trusting AI? Potentially without noticing it, could be within your home, could be at work. Where are you kind of using AI and trusting it to help you without maybe giving that trust a second thought? People want
I,
to give their thoughts. What about you, Tom? While Tom's telling us
yeah,
how he trusts it, maybe people can drop that in.
I can give a quick example. We have, and I'm sure lots of people use tools like this, but we always have note takers and transcript takers a lot of the time in our meetings. And then going back to those meeting transcripts, asking, AI questions out of it, things like that. That's something that I do almost daily, and don't really think about it now.
Hmm. Yeah.
Just
How
looking
to
the
do
chat.
stuff in Excel when I write an email, putting the data from
Eliza's
my
put, yeah, Whoop. That's a good one.
trusting it for advice, but not trusting it to do an action. That's interesting. What else have we got here? Personal research,
Research.
drafting emails.
I think emails is
So I
quite a
think,
popular one, isn't it?
yeah, I trust it to do all sort. Well, actually, this is an interesting point. I don't trust it to write the content of my emails, but I trust it to tweak it. And I do that sometimes with LinkedIn posts as well. I'll draft a LinkedIn post and then I'll say to it, can you make this snappier or punchier? And
Mm.
so I trust it to do that. But I'm still not quite ready to hand over my authentic voice, I suppose, to it because I don't think it's quite matched it yet. Um, yeah. Other places outside work, I think we can see like I don't know. I've got an Alexa. That's AI. Trust that to record my shopping list, to play my favorite songs. Things like Google Maps, ChatGPT. Do I trust ChatGPT? I don't know. I'm always a bit wary of it. But I think what we're finding here is that we use it. And as Ash has put, it's quite good for creating social media points for maximum engagement. Exactly.
Mm.
I think we're getting to the point that we're using it for some tools, but we're not using it for perhaps the things which we consider to be the most fundamental, maybe the most high risk, the things where we're really exposing ourselves. Do you think that's fair? Is that a fair summary? What do you think?
Yeah. Almost bringing it back to that team member element of it. It seems like from what we're saying here, it's a lot of stuff that you may trust, like an intern, if you put it on that almost that level of experience, professionalism perspective, that you would probably trust an intern or someone really more junior to
Mm,
do it, taking notes, drafting emails, summarizing things, but people aren't maybe yet asking it for advice based on the content and to make its own decision.
yeah, really interesting. So We're not the first people to consider trust and automation. And actually, I think one of the things that we can all take reassurance from,
Emails,
and
yeah.
sometimes I forget about, is that oh, my internet connection is unstable. Can you still hear me?
We just brought,
Am I
you've
back?
just come back, Claire.
I've come back. Oh, brilliant. I've worried that I might have
Yeah.
been stuck in that, frozen in that awful screen. Anyway, one of the things that I think we can all take great comfort from is that actually tech has happened before, that we have been on this journey before. I am old enough to remember the days when you used to exchange data in bundles by sitting next to somebody and initialing every page. I say that now to some junior lawyers and then look at me like shocked horror. Yes, I did sit in a room for 48 hours straight and initial the bottom right-hand corner of a page, which now feels like absolutely incredulous. What a waste of time. We would never dream of doing that now. But that's just one example of where we've kind of adopted tech and we've trusted tech to come back to us. So there are situations where we have developed trust in automation, trust in tech, and actually there have been quite a few studies done about how we go about trusting tech, and how we've gone about that. And one of the models that have been offered is by a researchers Hoff and Bashir, who looked over loads and loads of different studies of the interaction between humans and tech previously, and came up with 3 different layers of trust that they identified, and about like how these kind of layers interact with automation and how we can grow from them. So the first one they have is dispositional trust. Dispositional trust is essentially what happens with our baseline attitude to technology. You probably find this within your friendship group. Some people are absolute tech addicts, really up for any sort of tech, and others will just be naturally more nervous about it, less inclined to take tech. And that can feed into a lot of things. It can be the environment we've had when we were brought up, the things that we were exposed to, what our parents might be like, what our other friends when we're growing up might be like. But it can also be down to our professional training. And of course, I think this plays in really hard when you're talking to lawyers, because we are trained to look skeptically and cautiously at everything. We're trained to identify the risk. So the chances are that from a dispositional level, we are primed not to trust something that we don't fully understand, which is what we're being asked to do at the moment. The next piece is situational trust, which is exactly what has been evidenced by everybody's responses to where they're using it at the moment. So the fact that we might trust automation and tech in certain situations, but not in all of them. So context is absolutely key. We might trust it to shape the email to make it perform better on social media, but we might not trust it to actually draft it. And I think it also comes into there might be some context, maybe in personal lives, we think that there's less risk associated with it, so we'll use it. But actually, in professional lives, we will struggle to adopt it because we see it as more risky. Equally, I suppose if we bring AI or tech on because we think it's going to do some jobs that we might not otherwise get around to doing it, we're much more likely to trust it to do that, because otherwise we recognize that we wouldn't get done. So it's that kind of that benefit risk analysis, I guess. And then the third one is about learned trust. And I think this is really interesting for our conversation today. And that is the fact that learned trust is essentially, it's with experience, our trust grows. So whilst we might start off with something like dispositional trust, and we might say, do you know what, I'm not naturally inclined to trust tech and AI. Actually, what can happen is we can learn to trust it through use. And I know this is something that Tom, we spoke about previously, about how, learning to trust it through previous use was something that you'd certainly experienced.
Yeah, I think it's massive, really. It's something that, again, we obviously use AI daily within our own product. And I think even in my relatively junior career as a lawyer too, it's something that I've always had. And so using that daily throughout my career, I think has definitely helped me. One, just an example of that, we have, for example, like an AI redlining tool. So ultimately, you have your contract up in Word. We'll take your playbook, your negotiation positions. We'll then compare the text you're actually looking to the your playbook, and then we'll give you red lines and suggested comments, all AI driven. one thing that we do to help with that trust building exercise is we always explain almost the working out from the AI. So you can see the changes it's made, and maybe you agree with it, maybe you don't, but you can always see why it's come to that conclusion. And I think ultimately that's been so big, even just for me personally, in terms of using that relatively new feature. It's only been around probably for about a year, and it's something that's still really hot off the press in terms of tech, I think, just in the legal space. But seeing almost why it's come to those conclusions, being able to go back and tweak it, make it more reliable, that's something that's definitely helped me learn to trust AI a little bit more in my day to day.
Yeah. Really interesting. And I think this is the point, and this is what Hoff and Bashir have found through their review of the research, is that trust isn't static. It's not something that happens and we either trust or we don't. Trust can evolve, and it really is shaped by so much more than I suppose, the end product. It's shaped by who we are, it's about our experiences, and kind of the situations we find ourselves in. Um, which brings me to the next idea, which I find really interesting. We've already done that one. Well, we're going backwards. Let's not go backwards. Let's go forwards. Is about this concept of a human AI trust continuum, which sounds like sounds quite new age, doesn't it? But essentially, it's the journey that we go on when we progress through different levels of trust. And what I think is really interesting is when we look at it and we can compare it to the journey we go on with other team members, because I think let's take it all back to the point that really we're being asked to bring on tech and AI as an additional team member, because that's essentially what it is. So what parallels can we draw from the relationship we have with other team members? And if you look at the slide, we've got kind of the top layer is how we might use AI and tech, and then the bottom layer is kind of what the similar level we might be on with our employees. So I mean, we go from skepticism, that moment where where you get a new joiner and you're like, oh my God, what do they know? Do they know anything at all? Really,
Can they use
really,
the
and you
printer?
won't trust them because you don't know them, right? You're like, can they do anything? And then you get to that experimentation stage, I suppose, where you're going, okay, well, I'll start dabbling. I'll give them a little bit of work. Let's see how they do. And then if that goes well, then we get up to this, okay, well, we'll do a bit more verification, check everything's still going. Then we get more confidence with it. And when we're really confident, at that point, we integrate them fully within the team and we've got a really collaborative team. So that, I think, when you break it down and say, well, actually, we can take the same journey as we've learned from individuals and say, do you know what, we can put it on AI and tech as well. So I'm going to ask you to take a minute and look at that human AI trust continuum and think about where you are at the moment, where you feel like you land. And maybe it's different at home and work. Maybe actually you're at one point experimentation at work, but actually at home it's fully integrated. And maybe drop the stage that feel most true for you in the chat. Would be great.
Yeah, I think it'll
Tom, do you
probably
need a minute or do you
also.
know where you are? Where are you?
I'm definitely at the integration stage. I think I've gone through a lot of these early stages and probably landed at integration. I was going to mention it. I think it's probably different, not even just per department, maybe in the businesses and things that you're working in too, but also per use case. I think we've already spoken about the things that we're very happy to let AI almost like take the reins on and things like that. But you almost have to go through these stages, I think, every time you start using it for something new, right? Because again,
Mhm.
similar to comparing it to that junior colleague, would you trust them to start redlining NDAs, for example, pulling that information out of that? Yeah. Would you then give them a 60-page data protection agreement that they've never seen before? Maybe again, you're going through that trust building exercise all over again. So definitely something that resets and you have to go through time and time again, I think.
Yeah,
What about you, Claire? Where
absolutely.
would you say you are?
Oh, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think it depends how I use it, actually. So I think I'm at confidence slash integration with some of the less business critical things that I do.
Mm,
So like shaping social media posts, that kind of thing. I think I'm still very much at verification when it comes to using it for anything that I think there is data behind it. So, if I'm looking for research or, if I'm doing any sort of legal work, that kind of, I need to check. I need to check where it's getting
Mm.
things from. So I don't quite trust it so much there. And then from a personal perspective, it's interesting, isn't it? Because actually, if I look at this and it jumps out of trusted teammate as collaboration, well, Alexa is definitely my trusted teammate when it comes to shopping lists. But equally, it comes with a caution, I suppose. But yeah, so I guess in some
The
respects, I'm fully on.
Yeah, the legal research one you just brought up is really interesting to me for that verification piece because, again, I think it almost comes back to those three pieces that we were talking about earlier. Even when other people bring research to me, I still don't feel like I maybe trust it until I go through and understand it myself. Do you think there's
Mm.
a bit of that with the logic side of it playing into your psyche, or do you think it's
Yeah.
something else?
Well, I think when you're looking at it, right, we're faced with a system that we ask a question and it feeds us back what seems to be the right answer, but we have really, I mean, you can ask for resources, but it does it incredibly quickly and
Yeah,
it doesn't it, and I think so and probably because of the speed, largely for me, I sit there and think, well, how can it possibly have gone through every obvious answer and come back so quickly? And maybe that's partly, having been, we're sort of taught, aren't we, to take that breath, and we talk about it a lot,
mm,
but take your time, don't rush into an answer, think it through, all of those sorts of things. And actually, it's the opposite. It's canvassing so quickly that it's providing an answer to us that may or may not be right.
yeah.
Um, so
It's
I think the
that's
verification piece is also interesting in terms of the prompting. I don't know about you, how you feel about this, but actually, I quite like verifying stuff by asking it different questions along the same way, seeing if you get different
yeah.
answers.
And see if it trips itself up.
Mhm.
I was going to say, I read something, this is probably 6 months to 9 months back, where understand that AI tools were actually delaying the timer on their responses because, again, people were thinking, you've come up with this too quickly, you can't really be telling the truth. And so delaying the response actually increased this like trust factor that we're talking about. So even then, does that then make you
Oh,
question, oh, well, am I then almost being manipulated again by the
yes.
AI, almost like a human would, though, in building trust? Because there's things that humans can do as well to almost manipulate you into
Yeah.
trusting them more than you probably would do. You look at like scams, things like that. That happens all the time. So, is that something
That's
that
interesting.
also plays into the way that we work with it?
So do you mean all those times when I get really annoyed with ChatGPT because it is not giving me the answer immediately, and I'm like, what do you mean I have to wait? And then it doesn't even tell me how long I have to wait for. Actually, it could be playing me because it's sort of
Exactly.
making me. God, that's interesting. I just get really annoyed with it. I mean, that's a whole other conversation about how you set boundaries and about how you
For sure.
and
Maybe
about
that's a more
monitoring
human,
expectations. Yeah,
more about being
but
human.
yeah, that's an interesting. Oh yeah, that's it, isn't it? And then it's not authentic. Oh God, that is really fascinating, as Sam says.
You'd be second guessing everything
Um,
there.
yeah, that's it. I don't trust it to check spelling embedded. Oh no. um, so what have we looked? We've looked at most people looking back through the responses are somewhere around the verification stage. Probably a few people are erring into confidence. I'm not sure anybody does anybody at integration or collaboration, certainly in a work perspective, but I think we're all sort of in that middle stage. And we'll come on to this, but actually that's probably the healthiest place to be. And I will come on to that later, but and that will make sense. But yeah, I think the verification stage is a healthy place to be. So work with me on the analogy that we were just talking about a new joiner starting the team. I've gone too far now. No, I'm a bit a new joiner starting the team. And I'm going to ask you a bit of a playful question, if you like, and something that maybe we can think about and grow together. Because if we talk about AI and growing in the confidence, being like a team, maybe we should stop and think about actually what is it about how do we embed team members and how do we allow our teams to grow confidence in our members. So I would like you for a moment to imagine that AI has just rocked up. It's their first day in their office, looking a little bit nervous, don't know how to make coffee, don't know where the loos are, still not sure about the dress code, come in overly smart because that's what we do on our first day in the office, and then immediately regret it. They've sat down at the start the spare desk. They are ready to get going. They're hungry for everything. They don't understand the politics, but that's all right. They're using someone else's mug. We'll let them off for today. And I would like you to think about, what would your onboarding plan for them look like? What tasks would you give it first? How would you help it understand the culture? Would you put in place checks and feedback loops? How would you do that? So how would you integrate AI within your team if it was a human being that has rocked up today and is ready to start work? How would you do that? Have a bit of a think. It's a bit of an abstract concept, but have a bit of a think. How do you embed people within your organization now? And
Would you
how can you grow?
would you take it
Drop
out
some
for
thoughts in
lunch
the
on his
chat.
first day?
Yeah, and what does
Team
that look like?
builder?
How do you have lunch with AI? Actually, you could probably have a lovely lunch with AI. You know,
Probably.
it's a cheap date, isn't it? Um, Rebecca says, ask it to have
Okay.
meetings with different teams so that it can start to understand the language we use and our pain points.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Just when you start a new role, we've spent so much time just having conversations with people, understanding what matters, understanding what doesn't matter, getting under the skin of like the language that's used because different places use different language. Lisa says,
Yeah.
I'd let them know there's no
Lisa's,
stupid questions. Yeah,
I really
absolutely.
like that
Open
answer.
door, like ask me questions.
I think
Like
that
if
helps
I,
build trust too.
yeah.
'Cause you think
Was
that
it
something's
you, Tom,
making
who
the
was saying
effort.
to me that it's really good to ask AI and ChatGPT and these bots, like, what should I be asking you? What do you need to know to be able to help me? That's quite a useful question to be asking them. We'll
Yeah.
ask them to help with my spreadsheets. Yeah. Um, yeah, asking them all the relevant documents, knowledge, background you can. What would you do, Tom? What's the Summize policy with new starters? Do you have an onboarding policy? What do you?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I definitely relate it back to Rebecca. So we have different onboarding sessions with almost every different department, I think, and they'll talk about obviously what's important to their day to day, but then there'll be a bit more of an open conversation about how that probably relates to the new starter. I think understanding company culture, the way that people work, and obviously what is really important. Some organizations like to move really, really fast. It doesn't necessarily mean that the work has to be perfect, but you want to get it all done quickly. Other organizations could be the opposite, and it's obviously really important to understand the difference, I think.
Yeah. And that is so important because ultimately, if we think about like how we're going to grow to trust this, it's the same as a human, right? We want to make sure that it's this, I suppose it's when we think about like that verification stage, we need to be giving it all the tools possible when it does a task. So that then when we come to verify, we've given it the best chance of succeeding and passing that verification. Um, Whereas actually, if we just feed it random questions and don't give it any context, and it doesn't understand, how the culture, and I really love that point about, do they care? Are they willing to take risks? Is it highly regulated business, or is it a business that's, really dynamic and agile, maybe a startup? All of those things are really, really important. I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying that they'd written basically a keynote, and they'd fed the context into ChatGPT, and they'd uploaded 40 pages of documents, like as the prompt. And I was like,
Wow.
oh my God, I've never done anything like that. I mean, my prompts are usually one or two lines long, maybe. But
I've
that
never heard of
that's
40 pages.
yeah. But I mean, Fran, sorry, not Fran, Deborah, you make a good point here, which is about giving them to all the relevant databases and files, but confidentially. And I think that is probably also goes into one of these questions. It's like, how much can you give it with and trusting the confidentiality of it?
Hmm.
And how do we put boundaries and barriers around that. I mean, Tom, how do you what do you use in Summize from a business perspective from AI? Do you use like what's the word I'm looking for? Fenced off AI products, or do
Exactly.
you not worry about that?
So we use Azure. I get asked this question all the time, as you can imagine, but we use Azure OpenAI. So it's the same models and things like that that you would use if you went online and used OpenAI. But crucially, it's very different in the way that it processes data. So with OpenAI online, obviously your data is primarily collected, they'll train models on it, things like that. With the way that we do it, it's the same model, but instead the data is only used for the one-time processing. So they delete all your requests or
Hmm.
your data after it's done that action that you ask it to. We can also opt out of all the training instances as well because it's done securely through Azure. And that's, again, been a really big trust factor when we work with all of our different customers because, we have some very highly regulated businesses, we have government
Mm.
entities, and they obviously really need confidentiality too. So once you almost go through that process and explain how that model will handle your data, that's a big trust building exercise in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Angus has raised a point here, which I really, really like, which is like get it to review the website and look at the firm's values and then the policies and that's great because that's what we do when we start, right? We read websites, we look at the way things are drafted. You can tell so much like visually and the way that wording's used.
Mm.
Is it some cool young company? Is it really conservative? Yeah, all
That'd be
really, really important.
that'd be really
Pardon?
interesting as well, Angus. I was going to say, if you almost flip the coin on its head too, if you almost asked AI to then tell you from working with it, oh, what are we
Mm,
doing well? What are we not doing well? How should we better interact with you? Things like that. Because um, we always ask new starters, especially here, for their feedback, any other ideas that they brought to the table that we're maybe not thinking about that they've done previously. So that could be a cool exercise.
yeah, yeah. So I think when if we were to summarize, not surmise, oh, there's a play on words there, isn't there? If we were to surmise it all, um, and we were thinking about, I think we've covered most of this actually, but I think, it's about starting small, building gradually, feedback loops, transparent consistency, staying accountable. So taking each of those in turn, it's not about giving the new joiner the biggest task you can possibly do immediately. It's about warming them up, really. It's about letting them grow. We all have those, first week or so where you are essentially like letting them find their feet, get in within the business, just recognize where they are. And I think maybe with tech and AI, we just expect it to immediately be available to do the most complex task. Well, actually, it does need that background in order to get you there. And maybe it is about getting it to review lots of different things so it understands the voice, I think is important. Um, Feedback loops. I mean, I could wax lyrical forever about the importance of feedback. But yeah, really important, like in terms of feeding back to it, what you like, what you don't like. I don't know if people already do this, but that kind of like, I don't like this version. I prefer this version. So it begins to understand what you need from it. And I think one of the things that I'm quite intrigued about is the way that we talk to our AI tools as well. I was reprimanding someone the other day, jovially, but it was underlined with a slight seriousness that they were swearing at AI because it was not delivering what they needed it to deliver. And I was like, don't swear at the robots. We need to be nice to the robots, otherwise they'll start swearing at us, and that's going to end badly. So, but I genuinely feel that it's that feedback loop of not just the direct feedback, but actually how you interact with it. You are teaching it kind of all the time. um be transparent and consistent. I think it's the same thing. It's like let us ask it questions, let it be consistent with our approach, all of those things, monitor, and then stay accountable. I think this has also come up through the chat, which is essentially it's not just about delegating everything, washing your hands and then saying I'm going to blame AI when it all goes wrong. It's about actually having this dialogue and this kind of intertrust into trust perspective, I suppose. And I think that that's also an interesting point. It's about us trusting AI, but about AI trusting us, if that's even possible. But in
Yeah.
terms of like trusting us to be able to help it maximize its contribution. How does that
I like
land, Tom?
that.
Do you think that's a summary? Which bit did
Yes,
you
I think
like? The bit about trusting AI, trusting us.
I was going to say about staying accountable because, again, if we are really thinking about bringing AI on board as a new team member, like I think we all are, you wouldn't almost bring a new team member in and then when they mess something up, almost like kick them out to the side and be like, oh, well, it's their fault. I didn't have anything to do with it. Look how bad it is. You would
Mm,
almost take managerial responsibility for it and say, oh, okay, understand it's missed the mark on this. We'll make it learn from its mistakes and make sure it doesn't happen again. And so if you think about it that way, I think maybe that is a really good trust building exercise for everyone that's using it.
yeah.
Lisa, sorry your daughter's
Lisa,
abusing Alexa.
I love that. I love that. It's World Kindness Day is a huge tanker. I think that's wonderful. But yeah, I know I do generally think that we need to keep our P's and Q's with the robots for when they take over. We want them to be kind to us as well. I wonder actually what Alexa and I wonder if they change the way they work on World Kindness Day. I don't know. My musings now about World Kindness Day, but yeah, it's really interesting. And I think the next point I was going to really touch on was the point that Sam you raised earlier, and that is kind of about this appropriate levels of trust, because I think one of the things that we need to bear in mind, and obviously we've been talking so far about, well, can we trust AI? And I mean that like as humans, are we able to trust AI? We thought about maybe it's a different model about how we can build trust with AI when it's actually something that is different to how we normally interact, but actually maybe there are parallels we can learn. But I suppose the question that we need to consider is it about like establishing the right kind of trust with AI? Because with humans, we call that good judgment. We have this judgment capability. We know when to delegate. We know when to step out,
Mm,
step in, step out, all of those things. But I suppose with AI, it's really about what's the appropriate use, or I suppose the appropriate trust. And I think there's some really interesting work being done on this as well, which is around kind of the levels of trust and about how it is on a spectrum. So, and finding the right balance. So at one end, sorry, there we go.
mm,
At one end, we've got overtrust, which is essentially when we trust things without thinking twice about them. And we just let it go on. We don't think critically. We just accept what it says. We don't ask it to test. And there have been some hideous accidents in history that have related on this when people just blindly trust the tech that's in front of them without questioning it. I've always laughed, not to that extreme of horrendous accidents, but I always laugh at a friend who, when she first got her first GPRS system, her sat nav, again, I am that old to remember that. She thought she basically just followed it without thinking twice and ended up in a field. And you're like, well, at what point did you not think that that was right? Like when you were driving into the field? Like clearly that's not right, but just massive overtrust in this bit of tech because that was the thing that was meant to work. Um, so on one hand, we've got this overtrust, and then on the other end, we've got undertrust, where we don't use like this amazing capacity, or we ignore it. We don't believe the system. We don't trust in the system at all, and so we completely avoid it. And again, you
mm,
hear awful stories where pilots have ignored warning signals because they think that can't possibly be right, and they've overridden them because they don't trust them, and actually it is completely right, and you just don't trust it enough to hear it. And there's lots of parallels I think we can bring in there around kind of in terms of teams and about how teams operate and how we need to hear everybody's voice. Even just by hearing their voice we can challenge it, but we need to hear it. So about taking that time to at least take the pause. And then I suppose we've got in the sweet spot, right in the middle, is this calibrated trust, or more appropriately, probably appropriate trust. And that's where we've got the confidence to use it effectively, but we're not going to start just taking it all for granted. So we've still got that critical analysis. And I think that that is generally how the place at which we are really going to add value, which is that judgment piece, that critical analysis. And I suppose continuing that conversation, if we take it to the juniors, it's a bit like actually you delegate it to the junior, but you're still gonna, so you're gonna trust them to do it, but you're always gonna check it first. It doesn't mean about letting go of control. It means about exercising judgment. So maybe we'll have a bit of conversation around, where do you find, have you come across situations where you found or you recognize, take a minute to pause and reflect, where you've over-trusted a system, a technical system, or maybe you've under-trusted it? Has anyone had it? Any examples of where they've either under-trusted or over-trusted a system, and kind of the impact that's had? And how do you find that level of appropriate trust in your workspace? Tom, where do you think you sit on this scale generally?
I think I'm a pretty skeptical person by nature, unfortunately. And so I would say probably under trust in a lot of things, not even just AI. But I think it's really interesting looking at this scale, because it almost makes you recognize that, and to your friend's anecdote as well, even the amounts of trust that people put in different things are very, very different just from a baseline. And so recognizing probably where you sit on this scale and then almost trying to balance yourself out a little bit is also something that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah. I think that's it. It's about being mindful. It's right. Am I trusting this? Am I over trusting it? Am I, just delegate? Am I delegating all accountability to this product, or am I actually using my own? Need to drop it. Need to kind of tailor it back. And I think that's it. And it's, one of the questions is about, like, we're all under huge amounts of pressure. So it's about, you've got to have efficiency, and we're all taught that we need to delegate, and actually delegation is really tricky and it's really hard to do. But then, like, you have to balance that as well.
Yeah, it's tough as well, because I think when you're going through that human trust exercise as well, there's almost more physical instances as well that you can gauge from. You can read people's body language. Most of us can probably tell when a colleague's getting slightly stressed, or when they're panicking about something that maybe they need some help with. I think because we don't necessarily have that with AI as well, that can also be something that's quite tough to read, as to, okay, are you just giving me an answer because you have to give me an answer, or do you actually have the confidence in what you're telling me? And maybe if there was something that could help you understand those warning signs a little bit more, then that'd be really useful too.
It's interesting from what we know about, like, building relationships as well. Vulnerability is a really key point.
Yeah.
Like, vulnerability is really core to building kind of high performing teams and building psychological safety and all of these key attributes. But for that, you need to have this element of, I don't know. Like, you need to be able to demonstrate that vulnerability. And so maybe there's a missing piece here, which is that actually I don't think tech and AI ever tells us it can't do something. Like, we might get an error message, but it doesn't say, oh, I don't know that. Maybe that is when ChatGPT says it needs to think and it needs 15 minutes or 4 days, whatever the time frame might be. But yeah. What about everybody else? Where's everybody else on this spectrum? Anybody feel like they're under trust, over trust, perfectly calibrated trust? Anybody willing to share?
Anyone following sat navs off cliffs or anything like that?
Yeah, blindly into fields. It used to be a real thing, that, I think. I'm sure other people.
I think it was,
It's like, my dad's favourite sport is to reprimand lorry drivers for driving down the small roads because sat navs told them to come here. I mean, you see those signs as well, don't you, up by the side of the road that say "Don't follow sat nav." That's
a very Oxfordshire move, I think.
Very Oxfordshire comment, yeah. So if we're going to talk about key takeaways, I want to leave some time for any questions at the end. So if we're going to leave space for key takeaways, I think bridging everything I think we've talked about is that to bear in mind that trust is built. It's not something that is given. It's not immovable. It is something that evolves over time, and will evolve as we use it. We should all be aiming for appropriate trust. That middle point, that calibrated trust. So it's not under trusting something, it's not over trusting it. We still need to keep our wits about us, still keep that critical analysis point that is so important. And then ultimately, I believe that the future of trust is partnership. So it is this kind of two-way level of trust that we have, but also understanding that we need to trust AI and tech to do what it's good at, and then we can get on with the stuff that we are really good at. And I think that is going to be absolutely key. It's about this balance between human judgment and then machine intelligence, and how we can use together. Have I missed anything, Tom? Any other key takeaways from what we've been talking about? What's come up in the chat?
No, I think the first one that we've mentioned there as well, where trust is built and not necessarily given. I think a lot of people, as we've seen in the chart, are using AI for slightly smaller building blocks, you could call them, in their work and in their personal life at the moment. I think as long as people continue to do that, I think they'll be in a great spot. I mean, all of this technology, as we all know, is super, super recent. Even the version of AI that we're using now, as opposed to 9 months ago, is almost light years ahead. And so, like we've been saying all along, trust is iterative. You build on it, and you almost need to sometimes let go of the version of AI or the version of the person that you were trusting maybe 9 months ago, the same way that you would with a junior, and understand that actually they're a lot more capable now. They've been doing a lot more work, they're more experienced, and the version that you're now working with isn't the same as perhaps what you've been using before.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. Really interesting. It's an evolving thing. And I do think
Yeah,
there's also we can take a lot of comfort from the fact that yes, okay, AI and where we're going with tech feels new and massive and almost uncontrollable. But actually, we've been through these transitions before. This is not humans first radio. This is like we've kind of been there before. And I think actually, if we take it right back to what humans need to do in order to get us out of that trigger state, which is where we started from, a lot of that is about engaging evidence and kind of saying this is, we don't need to be triggered because this has happened before, and actually
yeah.
it's fine. So I think there is a huge amount of potential in kind of remembering that yes, it's different and it has bigger capabilities, but we have been here before,
That's
for
that's
sure.
interesting. I wonder if there's going to be almost like a big societal event or something like that that means that we trust or don't trust something like AI a lot more. I'm not quite old enough to remember it literally, but I remember my parents telling me about when obviously the 2000s came around and everyone thought, oh, all the computers are going to break, all the internet is going to go down because it won't be able to handle the date switch. And so I feel like
Yeah,
that maybe that was a big event for people in terms of trusting the
yeah.
internet and machines. So
I'm sorry, we need to
be
pause for a
sensible
minute.
stuff.
Were you not born in the year
I
2000?
was, I was, I was, but I was 3 years old, so
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I'm
I,
with you, Sam. I remember that New Year's Eve. Me too. I was the one who's like, the world's going to end at midnight. And of course it didn't, because of course it didn't. But, there's the whole spectrum from using cars, moving away from horses, electricity, like all of these things,
yeah,
which all have potential, but we have managed that, and it has been overcome, I suppose. And so yeah, we can do it. It's just about reformulating and revisiting. And actually, when you think about a lot of the research and the data that I looked at when I was putting together this deck, this is the data is from years ago. Like there's been a lot of work done about trusting in automation, and of course there has been, because of we had the Industrial Revolution, and suddenly
yeah,
we have to work with machinery. So really important that we understand and we understand how we engage with it, because I think it is different to engaging with people.
yeah.
Um, so they were the kind of the overarching three takeaways. Has anyone got any other takeaways that they're taking away from the session today? Um, Very happy to hear whether there's anything else that's resonated from our conversation. And I'd also love to invite any questions. If anyone's got any questions they want to ask, then we can do our best to answer them, or at least go away and find someone who is able to answer them. Um, we
Yeah.
can.
Um,
Oh, hi,
can you hear me?
Deborah.
Hi, Claire. Hi, Tom.
I don't.
So I'm interested in transactional interactions between two firms, lawyers, etc. I don't know if there are any transactional lawyers on the call. Obviously, originally we used to redline things with a pencil, but then slowly everyone accepts that the redlining is showing the truth of which changes I made and which changes the other side made, etc. And every now and then we go back to the law firm, and embarrassing as this is, and says, please run me a red line between this version and that version because
Hmm.
we're having a
Yeah.
version control problem. And then everyone is reset. So what AI tools are being used with transacting parties, two sets of lawyers, law firms, or in-house, that is now accepted that we're going to use this as a deal making tool. So I don't know if the redlining is a good example, but it
Yeah.
very
Hmm.
much speeds up the discussions, the negotiations. We trade drafts, and everyone is on board with that. So I wonder whether there'll be something, and with so many different tools floating around, I don't know what that next thing is to speed up transactions and discussions and documenting them.
Yeah.
It's a
I
really
think that.
interesting question. Have you got any examples, Tom, that you
Yeah,
see?
ultimately, this is very much the space that we work in at the moment. And I think there is tech that we'll probably get to that maybe we aren't quite ready for yet, particularly with this human trust element. I mean, obviously, like I mentioned, we have an AI redlining tool that will process the agreement, provide you with feedback and red lines and commentary. But at the same time, we don't automatically insert that for you. We still want that human interaction where the lawyer is saying, okay, this is correct, I'll insert it, or maybe I'll tweak it. Where I can imagine that going maybe in a few years' time, once this tech's been around maybe a little bit longer and that trust's been built, is you'll get the AI automatically inserting maybe those red lines and doing that immediately without almost the lawyer interacting with it, and taking that almost one step further. And I've started to hear about this, but I don't think I would use it myself currently, is where you set up almost two AI agents that are negotiating something like an NDA, and they automatically just talk between each other, and there's no human interaction at all. You just get the finished document. And so, is that somewhere that we're going to end up maybe in 3 to 5 years potentially? But I think there'll always want to be some level of human interaction and stepping in at some point.
Doesn't it have to, yeah, isn't also some of the regs saying that you have to identify when an AI is interacting with you? And we've had NDAs that are being negotiated by AI without, someone being clear that
Mm.
that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
So yeah, very interesting. And I think NDAs are probably going to be as you say, one of the obvious starting points, where the two AIs just get on with it.
yeah,
And
and I think that.
that becomes a trusted output to say, is that good enough? Did we need a human? Is it a
Yeah.
good use of time?
And does that maybe also, I think, maybe raise like ethical questions as well, in terms of, obviously, as lawyers, we all stand by a code of ethics. We take responsibility for the work that we're doing, the advice we give. If you are presenting this work as maybe something that you stand behind, but you've really not had any input into it, then do we as a profession almost need to shift in that sense as well?
I was thinking that one of the pieces, the tools that I'm seeing widely accepted now is like transcripts. So using tools like Otter AI, and so records a meeting, prepares a transcript. And I was talking to someone yesterday who was preparing board minutes. And I said, what are you doing? Are you do you record it? Is there a way of making it more efficient? And she was saying, that they use Otter AI.
Mm,
Um, and I was thinking, do you know what? Actually, yes, we are. I feel like I am trusting transcripts of conversations now, um, quite normally. But actually, I mean, that's totally open for manipulation,
definitely.
really. Um,
That's what I was just
and
thinking. That's something that
yeah.
we all really commonly stand behind. But as you say, using it in board minutes where people are making decisions, things like that, that could have huge ramifications if it
Mm.
got it wrong. So
And I suspect in law firms as well, and interactions with lawyers, they're using it as well. Maybe it's because the meeting's also recorded, so you could always say go back and check. But it's the same with documents, right? You can always go back and check, but we just trust that red line, like we trust the transcript. So yeah, I wonder but exactly, Deborah, that it kind of gets to that point where there will become a point where that tipping edge of we just trust it. Like we get to a point where, but then it's not really about trusting the tech, is it? It's about trusting the people who are using the tech, not to manipulate it. Because I don't think the tech could manipulate it. It would be the person who's instructing the tech to manipulate it. Yeah, pretty true. Angus puts a point actually that AI, he heard someone say that AI won't be the end of employment lawyers, but employment lawyers who understand how to use AI will. And I think that's definitely true. I think one of the exciting things actually is about the real shift that this is going to have in the legal profession, and people and how people turn up, and especially how law firms turn up, because it is gonna instigate a change, I think.
Definitely.
Anybody got any questions that they'd like to raise to the collective?
Tom, I was interested to know, I think you mentioned something about all of the prompts and revisions and that kind of thing being deleted quite quickly after. But I thought that was quite interesting because I would have thought people would want to kind of keep that stuff for the AI to be learning on it, at least internally. So yeah, just wondered if you could talk about that a bit more.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's something that we really come up against quite a lot. Is obviously the space that we work in being contracts. It's a lot of businesses, most highly confidential information, and so a lot of the time people will come to us and say, okay, how is our data treated? How are we sure that contract data that we're using isn't being inputted into a wider LLM, for example? And obviously the way that we respond to that is that it's deleted immediately after use. What a lot of people, particularly in that redlining space, are after is not so much remembering the content, for example, but remembering the interaction that you've had with the AI and the way that you've maybe amended things or asked for things to be amended, and then learning from that. We definitely do an element of that user experience learning and training, but when it comes to content, I think it's almost a trade-off. Maybe you're happy for it to remember the way that you talk in your emails, or the way that you ask it to redraft slides, for example, but maybe you're not quite ready for it to be constantly pulling back from contract provisions, really.
Cool, thanks, helpful.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Nina, did you have a question? Anyone else got any questions? No. In which case, I might wrap up in the way that we often do with Being Human, and ask you just to drop into the chat, take a second and reflect, and then drop into the chat one word to describe how you're leaving the session today, and how you're entering the afternoon. Tom, when you're ready, what word are you gonna choose? How are you describing? How are you leading this session?
I would say energized. I think this is probably the most in-depth and productive conversation I've ever had at 8 a.m. in the morning. So yeah, it's definitely left me ready to start the rest of my day.
Love it. You've achieved, check, you can go home now.
Exactly,
that'll do. Illuminating, stimulated, intrigued, positively inspired. These are all words we love. 2 words, Sam. I like the hyphen, but that's 2 words. Being mean because I know you. Any other words that are coming in? They can be negative. You can go terrified, switched off, hungry. There is a recording available, and I will skeptical. Will's skeptical. It's a good place to be, good for starting place on the journey.
You're sitting on that low trust scale there as well.
Yes, exactly.
Optimism. I like that from Lisa.
I like that. Will saying he's not sure whether he trusts the people behind the companies. That's very true.
Yeah.
So I will circulate a recording, and just a bit of news for people who don't know much about us, but we are doing a series of masterclasses with Summize, partnering with Summize. The next one isn't until February actually, but that will be on achieving more. So it's about how we can maximize our performance alongside tech. So that will be very exciting. So that's in February. But if you scan the barcode, the QR code here, you'll find out all the different events. So we do events virtually, and then we have in-person events too. So all of the events are listed there. Our next in-person event is in January. So yeah, do check us out, do join. And thank you very much for all of your interaction. It's made it lots of fun. Thanks very much, Tom, for all your wonderful thoughts. And I didn't think you seemed tired at all. So I think you've done very well with the time.
That's kind of you.
Deborah, recommend a leaving point from Deborah saying recommend the Duat podcasts on the top, including Mo Gawder. That's one to listen when you've got something exciting to do afterwards, because that can be quite dumb. Sorry, Lisa, I cut across you.
No, it was just to say thank you both very much. That was a great discussion. Lots of good points.
Oh.
Thanks
very
you.
much. Cheers, Lisa. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks, everybody. It's great, been a very great session, and I will we'll circulate a recording. Thank you very much, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.
How do I stop the recording? That's the question.